Hey, everybody. So, today we're going to talk about mindfulness and mindful eating. And why mindfulness is important is because many of us don't feel that we actually have control over our minds. In actual fact, we don't have a lot of control over our bodies. Our bodies can be ridden with all sorts. As we tend to age, we might end up with disease that we have no control over, or we might end up with brittleness in our bones and all sorts of things. And I don't want to get into any negative thinking around that. But what I do want to focus on is the one thing that we actually can control is the power over our mind. And when we start to be more mindful in our daily practices, we can choose how we want to use our mind rather than have our mind run the show. So, what does this mean in a nutshell? Like I advocate that in order to build biceps, in order to build muscles, we need to work that muscle. The mind is another, let's call it a muscle that we need to work. The more practice that we provide ourselves, the more that we practice working on our minds, the more that we allow us to control our minds rather than allow our minds to control us. So, in view of that, what is mindful eating all about? Mindful eating is all about allowing ourselves to be very present to the form of eating. Okay, what it allows us to do is to actually tune in with the foods that we're eating, to be aware of our senses around the foods that we're eating. What does this help us with? One, it helps us with things such as binge eating. So when we become more mindful around the foods that we eat, we start to enjoy those foods for what they are, tapping into each of our senses. And it can actually help us start to understand the reasons that we choose the foods that we choose, enjoy the process of eating those foods, thus eliminating some of the uncontrollable behaviors that we might have around certain foods or all foods. So what I want you to do when you start to think about mindful eating, and it doesn't have to be with every single meal, we can try with one meal a week or a meal a day, is to create a new approach or a new mental habit when we're eating foods. Why is this important? It's important because we tend to eat in a rush most of the times, or we're focused on other things when we're eating, so we don't actually ever end up tasting our foods and we end up eating more than what we need. That becomes counterintuitive, especially if we try to focus on weight loss. So when we start to eat more mindfully, we start to be more aware of the foods that we're eating, and we start to be more aware of the feeling of fullness. Okay. It also helps our bodies and our brains build some neural pathways that support more attention on the foods that we eat, being present to the foods that we eat, and it creates new habits, okay, of enjoying the foods, being aware of the foods, but also being aware of fullness. The more that we practice mindfulness, not just around eating, but around everything that we do, the more we allow our brains to build new neural pathways, okay, thus creating a more happy and an enjoyable experience. So, with mindful eating, these are the steps that you take, and these are the things that I want you to practice. And you can try this with any piece of food. Some of the books that I've read and the things that I've tried myself is with a small piece of chocolate or a small piece of fruit, but you can try this with any food that you eat. So, first step would be that you have the piece of food in front of you on your plate. Just almost go to a neutral place. Imagine that you've never tried this piece of food before, okay? And allow yourself to tune in for a few moments to each of your senses. So your sight, so we're looking at the colours of the food, the shape of the food, your sense of smell, so we're smelling the aromas that this food is creating, okay? If we've touched the food, so if we're not using a fork or knife, you might want to look at how that food feels. So imagine a peach, the sensation of the skin of that peach on your hands. And then we also want to tap into the taste of that food. So I've actually gone through a 30-minute exercise of trying a raisin. And it was really about bringing it into the mouth and being aware of what my jaw was doing, and how it felt entering my mouth, my sense of smell, leaving it on my tongue without actually moving and getting the feel for how that raisin felt on my tongue. Okay, thinking about the movement of chewing. Okay, and thinking as well when we do cut up that piece of food and put it into our mouths, we've taken in the aromas, allowing it to sit there for just a few split seconds, and then going through the process of actually chewing our foods and moving through that process, noticing anything that comes up for us, whether it is any feelings or any thoughts around the food, or anything else. Okay, if it's something that's you know a little bit deeper for you. So if you have had issues with food in the past and you're noticing that a particular food rises the emotion of maybe how you felt as a child, if you were a larger child, or if you got bullied at school for being a fat kid, or whatever that is, if that comes up for you, just being aware that that is coming up for you and letting your thoughts go at that point in time, and just coming back to your senses and enjoying that moment. Okay, so I want you to focus on doing that when you're taking the food in. Allow yourself and train yourself to be present to your senses. It actually allows us to disconnect with everything else that's going on for us and just being really connected with what we're doing, i.e. enjoying the taste of the food, the smell of the food, and basically enjoying eating that food and being present to enjoying the movement of that food through our mouths, into the back of our throats, and through our bodies. All right, guys, so try that out for me. Do use the mindset page to let us know how you go with that practice, and let us know what also comes up for you. Have a good one.